I wanted to clap.
Go ahead, clap.
No.
Pop it. Come on.
Ready?
Hey, folks. Ready or not, we're going to go. Hey, folks. You know, this is Scott Ellis, who is the web designer extraordinaire. We weren't able to get him to Blog World because he's traveling all over the universe.
You're a busy man.
All over, yeah.
So we managed to catch up with him here in Dallas before we left. And Scott, thanks for joining us. We want to chat with you about web design.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So at VS Ellis on Twitter and Scott Ellis on Google Plus, of course.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
So web design. I've got $1,000.
Can you build something for us?
Go for it, right now.
What do we get for $1,000?
That's the first question that everybody asks me. How much is it going to cost to build a website? And I hate to sound like your traditional consultant, but the answer is always the same. It depends.
It depends.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, going
Hate that answer.
Yeah, I know.
But we're going to break it down a little bit.
We got to break it down.
Wait, are you telling me you would do something for $1,000?
I would do something,
Okay.
but it may not be what you
Like
want.
a favicon, maybe?
Yeah, like one favor.
I'll talk to you for a couple hours
Yeah.
and help you plan something out. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's usually what people one of the first things they come to is how much is this going to cost? But really you got to step back a couple of steps and think through some things before you can really answer the question of how much does it cost to build a website. So one of the first things I usually try to encourage people to do is have some kind of a plan. Even if you've never built a website yourself before or had one built for you, have some idea of what you want to do and write it down, because as you're writing it down, thinking through it a little bit will help you kind of iron out what you really need and where you really want to go with this, so that you can put that in front of a developer and say, okay, here's what I'm thinking, and then they can start talking you through some of the options.
Do you suggest sketches if the person can sketch it all, or do
Yes.
you not like to work with that?
Sketches are awesome.
Okay.
I love it when people come to me with an idea like that, because it shows that they've put some thought into it and they're prepared to, take those next steps.
Right.
And if you're not a good sketcher, don't worry about it.
I'm a
My
horrible
sketches have like
sketcher.
little stick men on them, and
You'd
whatever.
rather not have her sketches.
Hey!
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
If you can draw a box, you can sketch websites.
You know,
Get the layout
That's true,
there.
because I've done it before.
Yeah, that's all you need.
I kind of think of this as being the same process as, if you're putting up a website, it's your storefront to the world. So it's almost like, if you're going to go get an office or a retail store, you need to understand what your floor plan is. You don't just go to someone and go, oh yeah, just give me an office.
Right.
Just give me an office. I mean,
Right.
how many doors do we need? How many office spaces? That you got to have an idea. You really
How many
need.
kitchens? Very important.
Yeah.
Like, you did our website. You've done all of our websites, but like if we take a look at the Geek Beat site, we came to you, we had an existing design, so that helped, but we also knew there were like 10 things that we wanted to change, and we gave you this laundry list. We said, here's how we think people need to flow through the site and how things kind of need to be navigated. And, and I guess that's better than nothing.
That's a whole lot better than nothing. And in fact, that's exactly what we did. Is we took the existing site. So that's helpful if you have an existing site, because you can kind of say, okay, here's what works, here's what doesn't. Let's expand on that. Let's change some things. But even if you don't have an existing site, and even if you're not a designer, don't worry about it. Just get some thoughts down, get some process, some flows out there, some ideas on what you want to do. And then you can start talking to somebody about what you really want to build out long term.
And in that, one of the main things that you told me to think about when we were talking about our websites is the menus and the navigation itself. What pages do you need to have on your website? Because that's going to determine where you go with things.
Yeah. Yeah, and really one of the things that we walk our clients through typically is also what we call content mapping.
Yeah.
So we'll sit down and do a big brainstorm of all the stuff that's going to be on your site. And it could be anything from categories and tags to the types of content. Is it going to be text? Is it going to be video? Is it going to be audio? Are you going to use a lot of pictures? Things like that. And kind of get that whole map out in front of you. So then you can start to organize things a little bit. I'm a big fan of very simple navigation. People will notice on the GeekBeat site, there are no drop downs, right? If your only way of getting people to content is through deep, multi-level drop downs and things, you probably haven't thought through it well enough.
Okay.
But that's hard to do if you've never done it before, which is part of what you pay somebody like me to help you figure
Well,
out.
let's talk about that for a minute, okay? What I want to know is, how often do people come to you with these grand designs for these monstrous websites with, deep levels of complexity? How often do you get that? And how do you deal with that? Because it seems to me like you have a lot of experience managing high traffic sites. So you've seen how that works. What about people who have no experience and they just want a high traffic site? Are they going to overdo it, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's probably a common mistake, is people kind of come with all guns blazing. They have all these big grandiose ideas, and sometimes that's fine, but usually, especially if they're just getting started and this is their first rodeo, if you will, you got to kind of talk them down off the ledge a little bit and say, it's probably better to go out with the main things that you're really focused on and then start to expand from there, because I don't care how many times I've done this, I don't care how many times you guys have done this, we all make assumptions that are usually wrong.
Yeah.
And so for somebody that has really no experience building a website, I almost guarantee you your assumptions are going to be wrong.
Yeah.
So before you go off and you create tons of content and spend a ton of money on a website, build it out in phases. And it's usually what we end up doing is we take that, because also a lot of times people will come to us and they're like, okay, now how much is that going to cost? And we throw a number in front of them, they're like,
woo!
Yeah, okay. So maybe we take that and we break it down into phases a little bit so you can see what works. You can start to monetize your site however you plan to do that.
One other, as a complete sidebar, this is one of those areas that analytics are so important on.
Yeah.
You and your analytics.
Yeah, I know.
We love analytics.
I'm joking.
But when you build out this web property, especially if you're doing it from scratch, I think one of the most important things is you've got to take a look at how is the traffic coming in, where is it going, what kind of things are ending up being popular, and you can do A/B testing and things like that with your analytics. But if you just think, like you were saying, I think this is what people want, and you build that, it turns out that's not at all what they want.
Right.
You wasted the money to build it. So it is almost better to do it in phases. Like, okay, let's put up phase A, let's see how people react to it, let's see how we're able to drive traffic to it, and then from there, then schedule phase B based on real analytics and real information and numbers.
Absolutely. And I mean, people have seen that on the GeekBeat site. The things on the front page and some of those columns have changed a little bit over time. And as we've learned more about how people are coming to the site and what kinds of content is sticking with people and things like that. So,
by the way, I'm sure everybody wants to know, how much does it cost to do the GeekBeat site?
How much does it cost? So that was an interesting one, because we had something to work from, but we still rebuilt the site from scratch. And
it was a complete overhaul.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, 100% overhaul.
Yeah, there was a lot of work. And the design is Rafal at Studio Press did the actual design. So I did the layouts and the sketches and the wireframes. Rafal did all the artwork and made it look very pretty and nice. And he's a phenomenal designer, but he does some very nuanced designs.
Yeah.
It can be very hard to code sometimes. We love it, but it was a lot of work. So to answer your question, if somebody came to us and said, hey, I want a site and I love what you did at GeekBeat, what's that going to cost? I would probably ballpark it, depending on their needs, it's somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000.
Yep.
Now, some people are going to be surprised by that.
That's not $1,000.
No, it's not. That's what, I think people are used to hearing, I can go to a certain website and hire a designer from somewhere for $50 and get a web page and whatever. Well,
and you might be able to, but it's not going to be manageable.
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to go buy a theme. You can buy all kinds of themes for $50, $100 max. You can buy a theme, and it's going to look great if you take it exactly the way it is and you stick with the exact functionality it has, and that's it.
But I've never bought a theme that I didn't want to change.
Oh, you have to change things. And then what's going to happen is you're going to spend hours and hours and hours. It's going to require some redesign, customization. One of the benefits to buying a pre-made theme is the upgrade path. This is what they'll sell you on is, hey, we're going to put out upgrades to these themes and everything else. The problem is, in order to ever be able to upgrade, you have to have not customized anything. As soon as you customize something, if you upgrade, the customizations are gone.
True, but that is also one, and I don't want to sound like I'm doing a total plug here, but that's one of the benefits of using a framework like we've done with Genesis.
Exactly.
So you've kind of layered this theme on top of Genesis, so that as core functionality for that framework gets updated, it doesn't impact the customizations that we've done. So
that's true.
That's
that is
very
true.
helpful. Yeah.
All right, so what other things would you recommend that people come to do before they get to you?
So there's two things, and I will tell you 90% of the clients I have, here's where we get hung up. Content.
Oh yeah.
Everybody wants to build a site.
We'll do the content later.
We'll do the content. We'll start building the site as they're supposed to be building out the content. We get code complete on the site, and most of the time they haven't written any content. So we do have people that will write content.
Yep.
We started actually putting that into our bids simply because almost every single time without fail, they don't provide any content. Or
there's no website without content.
Well,
I mean,
exactly. We'll get done with the site, and then it's like 3 months later before they're finally ready to launch because of the content issue. So, and content should not be an afterthought because all the aesthetics, all the functionality, the stuff that we can build is awesome. But it really is the content on the site that makes it tick.
And when you say content, we're not just talking about copy like text. We're talking about photos, video, the whole shoot and match,
how that content's laid out, how it's interlinked, how you've mapped your categories and tags. Laurel gave me a great analogy a long time ago when you're planning a site. So this is a good tip for anybody that's starting that process is when you're mapping those things out, think of your categories as if you were writing a book. Your categories are the chapters of the book. The tags would be the index items. So if somebody kind of is trying to walk through that process and figure out how to differentiate, that's a good little tip.
Interesting.
Yeah. Take time. Your copy needs to be well done. We can help you with that too.
So you got to have your content and you got to have it categorized. So if I was a guy who does yard work, which clearly this place needs a little yard work done.
We need to find one of those guys.
Yeah, if I did yard work, then let's say I might have a category for landscaping, and then I might have a category for fencing, and a category for something else.
Yeah.
And then so now I've got a category for landscaping. Now what I need to do is I need to have several different examples, like stories of landscaping, pictures, text, etc. So I've got customer A, customer B, customer C. Now I've got a few pieces for category 1, then for category 2 for fencing. Now I need to have stories for the fencing, and I need to bring that to you. I need to come to you and be like, okay, here's my story about customer whoever with the fencing, and here's 5 pictures and a little video I made.
Yeah.
And then you can do something with that.
And testimonials are content. Anything you can think of like that. Put all that stuff together, organize it, and then you've got your content.
SEO. I mean, all I ever hear about is SEO, SEO. Why does people want SEO so bad? Because they think that if they just build a website, search traffic will come. How important is...
That's what the movie taught us.
I know. How important is search traffic, and what kind of things do you have to do to be prepared for it?
So I put SEO into 2 buckets, and there are people that will break it down a little bit more, but for me, for the most part, there's the on-site SEO, which is largely the mechanics of your site, and then there's the off-site SEO, which is link building and backlinks and all that other kind of stuff that goes on to that. And you can certainly split those things up more and get more nuanced about it, but those are kind of like the 2 big things I try to get people thinking about. We, just by nature of the products that we use, we build most of our sites on Genesis and things like that, the mechanics of the SEO are going to be largely in place. Now it's still up to you to go and put in meta descriptions for each post and different titles and do some research and use different tools to kind of figure out what keywords make sense in this particular article. I think it's important because it makes your content easier for somebody to find, even if they're only looking for it on your site and using the search functionality there. I always try to think about when I'm writing a blog post, is what I'm writing about, how is somebody going to search for that? Not how am I going to search for that, how is somebody else going to search for that? What are they looking for that's going to lead them here? So it's SEO from the standpoint that it should be, it should help you optimize for search, but ultimately your goal is to get people to that content. Whether it comes from a search engine, a backlink on another site, or something completely different.
Or if I'm the landscaping guy and I say, hey, just go on my site and do a search for the fencing jobs.
Yeah.
Then it should be, then
Just go there.
the articles should each have all those words
Right.
in them that are required so they can find those things.
And that's where you can get into mapping out the categories and the tags and kind of looking at a matrix view of how all those things work together. So,
All right, one more.
Yeah.
One more thing that somebody should do before they get to you.
Are we running out of time already?
We are.
Oh,
No, it
Talk
goes
about
fast.
this all day.
We can talk about. I think you wanted to set a marathon, like a 24-hour talk about this.
I should do that. I should do like a Twitter marathon or something. So one other thing that people often hesitate on or make a mistake on is hosting. And we've had our own hosting issues around here lately we've been dealing with, right?
We have. Woo.
And this is a very technical crowd. We know our stuff.
Yeah.
But when things go wrong, man,
they go really wrong.
Yeah.
They go really wrong.
It's hard.
And yeah, you're right, because there are very, for example, personally, there are very few people who know more about hosting than me from all around. I mean, I used to be part of a hosting company. I certainly know how to set those things up, and yet
still
we had our sites running on dedicated servers, like one site, one big dedicated server. And that worked okay, but even that had a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
If we can't do it on a dedicated, if we can't get like GeekBeat running on a dedicated server at soft layer, a big, huge, expensive box, if we can't make that run right, then what chance does anybody have?
Well, I think their best chance is going to look at a managed hosting service, right? Our stuff is on Synthesis now. All of my stuff is. They specialize in WordPress, particularly Genesis on WordPress, but there are other ones out there as well. It's going to cost you more than a $5 or $6 plan at one of the big hosting companies. We won't name any names, but
GoDaddy.
Yeah.
1&1. I'll name names. I don't care. HostGator.
Yeah, right. They all have these, $5, $6 whatever deals. That's kind of okay if it's a personal blog and your, grandma's looking at pictures of the kids or whatever. But if you're running a business website, the availability of that site, the speed of that site, all that stuff really matters. And I'm sorry, you are not going to get that for $5 a month.
Right.
So,
and the thing is,
put a crowbar into your wallet
and
go pay $20, $30, $50 a month for hosting. That is the foundation of your site.
And if you want a big traffic site, you're going to have to be on a dedicated server or managed hosting for that, because
so they can
even
handle
Google
traffic.
will
Google
you for it.
Google looks at your server performance, and they know. I mean, they could easily flood your server and shut it down. So if you put it on a shared site at GoDaddy with 2,000 other people on the same server, well, they know that they could take 2,000 people down if they overload it, so they don't send much traffic.
Exactly.
But if you put it on its own dedicated server, and this is well documented, you put it on a bigger site that can handle more, Google sends more traffic. We know this to be a fact.
Yeah.
So,
and truthfully, the difference between the $5 a month for a really cheap hosting package and say $40 a month, while exponential, as a multiple seems high, but the one time that you have to deal with that thing being down and you're losing business, that could be years worth of that hosting cost.
Exactly.
Literally, the aggregate was
easily
like $100. Okay, I mean for like the difference. Okay, and the amount of headache was way more than that.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time, but before we go, there is one last little thing that I just want to mention, which is, I think that a lot of people are intend to, even if they say, okay, I can pony up and I'll go ahead and I want to get a really nice website designed and be very professional, that's what we need.
Right.
I think that one thing they forget about is ongoing maintenance.
Yeah.
Because building a website is a living, breathing organism. If you look at the GeekBeat site, for example, we add over 100 articles a month. Okay, the site is constantly changing, it's constantly in flux, and we are constantly coming to you. Last night I sent you one request, this morning I sent you another request.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're like, Scott,
always.
Scott.
Yeah, that's.
I think that people need to not only budget to have an appropriate site designed up front, they need to budget to have appropriate hosting. They also need to be able to have you occasionally doing maintenance, and that's something, whether it's you or anybody else, they need to think of their website in terms of ongoing investment, not one time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that gives you guys a little bit of look into this side of things. And I know people just want to get started, get going, but do a little planning, do a little bit of thinking beforehand.
Absolutely.
I think that's the message here. So thank you so much. You guys, follow him.
Follow him. Go to vsellis.com.
At VS Ellis on Twitter.
Scott Ellis on Google+.
Pretty much VSL is anywhere else.
That's true.
All right, yeah, because Google Plus is like that. So.
Yeah.
And we'll let you get back to your busy schedule.
Thank
and
you, guys.
you and I had our caffeine. We
fun.
probably need to go get Callie some. So.
Cheers.
See you guys.
Bye.